EU study shows startups with IP 1,000% more likely to be funded. The European Patent Office, EPO, and the European Union Intellectual Property Office, UIPO, have released a 61-page study showing that EU startups that secure intellectual property, IP rights protection, are 10 to 2 times more likely to secure early-stage funding than those that do not. The startup ecosystem in Europe has boomed in recent years, with venture capital (VC) deals reaching EUR 110.8 billion in 2021, compared to EUR 4 billion in 2013. This is said to be due both to a more mature European VC industry and to growing interest from non-European investors. IP rights in the EU are similar to those in the US, with some variations. Certain subjects are covered by EU law, while other areas are covered by the IP laws of the individual states. According to the EPO, on average, 29% of European startups have filed IP rights, with important differences between industry sectors. Biotechnology is by far the most IP-intensive sector, with nearly half of startups using patents or registered trademarks. Other IP-intensive sectors include science and engineering, with 25% of patent users and 38% of trademark users. Healthcare, 20% of patent users and 40% of trademark users. And manufacturing, 20% of patent users and 36% of trademark users. According to the study, the filing of patent and trademark applications in the seed or early growth stage is associated with a higher likelihood of subsequent VC funding. This effect is particularly important in the early stage, with a 4.3 times higher likelihood of funding for startups that filed for trademarks and a 6.4 times higher likelihood of funding for startups that filed for patents. Startups that filed for both trademarks and patents show the highest likelihood of funding in both the seed and the early stage. According to João Negrão, Executive Director of the UIPO, intangible assets represent the vast majority of the value of a business today, and formal intellectual property rights, such as trademarks, are not only legal safeguards for investment in intangibles, but the key to securing financing and collaborations. This is especially important for newly started, innovative companies who typically have few assets at the initial stage aside from their intellectual capital. Today's study shows that 27% of the startups analyzed had applied for a trademark more than any other IP right. Of interest to investors, the study found that the filing of patent and/or trademark applications is associated with a more than twice as high likelihood of successful exit for investors. The highest likelihood of initial public offering, IPO, or acquisition is observed for startups that filed for both patents and trademarks. A higher likelihood is also observed for startups that filed for European IP rights than for those that make use of national-level rights only. The EPO is introducing a Deep Tech Finder, allowing potential investors to identify and assess startups with pioneering and promising new technologies. Need to protect your startup ideas? Book an appointment with us at www.eonlaw.com. Eon Law. Unleashing Genius.